All right, everyone. Welcome to Tiger Talk Tuesday, transitioning to life after sports. We are at episode 48, and we have a very special guest today, head coach of the Professional Women's Hockey League Ottawa team, Carla MacLeod. Welcome, Carla.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
48, that's pretty impressive.
I know we're kicking along here. Just started these in the summer. So, you know what? It's been, I'm super grateful for all the athletes that have been coming forward. For those of you that are new to the series, we started this after losing some friends who were found deceased in their homes. And the mission and vision to all the athletes that have come forward is to help those supporting, help those suffering in silence across the globe. So, as athletes, we all go through different transitions, and we'll get into Carla's story. For those of you that are new to Carla, a little bit of background noise or information. She's a two-time Olympic gold medalist and former Canadian hockey player. She's played and coached women's hockey at the university, professional, and international levels. She's the first head coach of our Ottawa professional women's hockey team, and she was appointed September 16th and recently inked an extension as coach of the Czech Republic women's team. Hailing from Calgary, Alberta, MacLeod at 23 made her professional hockey and Olympic debut facing a crowd in Turin, Italy in January 2006. So very cool. With a gold medal in her name, she continued her journey with Team Canada at the 2010 Olympics, where the women claimed gold in front of hometown Canadians in Vancouver. When MacLeod hung up her skates in 2010, she went on to coach, helping lead the Japan women's hockey team to Olympic qualification in 2014. And before her move to the PWHL, she was the head coach for the University of Calgary Dinos. We also played against each other, which we found out at the U.S. Embassy. MacLeod was at Wisconsin from 2001 to 05, and I was at the University of New Hampshire from 2000 to 2004.
You
So
probably had a,
welcome.
you probably had a breakaway that game. My D part and I, the ice was so big at UNH that we were just giving up breakaways left, right, and center. So
I know they just had their alumni weekend. I was seeing some of the girls up there. I've got to get back. I haven't been, but welcome to the chat. It's so great to have you here. I mean, you're paving the way for women's hockey and so much of what you've done, and even as an athlete now as a coach. But what I'm most interested in is let's go back to your younger playing days. Were you always passionate about hockey? I was a ringette player, so I'm always curious how people got into hockey. My dad threw me in hockey, but tell us about your journey and what that was like for you.
yeah, it's definitely in my blood. There's no doubt about it. I was actually born in Spruce Grove, Alberta. Calgary's home now, but I was born in Spruce Grove, a smaller city just outside Edmonton. And I think really fortunate. I had at that point two older siblings. There's four of us now. I have a younger brother as well, but we lived in a cul-de-sac, and it was just like a little anthill of kids. And all of us played some form of a skating sport. So to your point, my sister was a really good ringette player too when she was younger, and she played for quite a few years. And I had to ask my mom and dad at some point, like, why did I go into hockey? Like,
Yeah.
it was 1986. It would have been so much easier just to throw me on the same team as Aaron and Ringette, just from a carpooling perspective, scheduling perspective. And so I had to ask him, and I think they're the coolest people on the planet, because they're just like, well, you asked at 4 years old, you asked if you could play hockey. And we thought, sure, why not? So I think I have very sort of forward thinking, incredible parents that really sort of facilitated this whole dream of mine, sort of unbeknownst to them and me at the time. But yeah, hockey is just what we've done. It's what we do to this day. I was just home in Calgary this last week, and I went to my niece's game, and there's just a genuine passion for it. And I was just so fortunate to be given the opportunity at the time that I started.
I love that you shared that because I mean, I speak to so many younger athletes as well. And we see, you hear about like the parents that are living vicariously through their children or whatnot. And I even catch my daughter is wildly passionate about horseback riding. And one time we were driving home from the rink and she was like, I don't want a scholarship. And I'm like, what? I have never once said, because she just switched to the female league. We played house league hockey and then she would do her horseback riding. And I was like, sweetheart, I'm not pushing you there. But I love that your parents, it's kind of given me something to think about. I love that you asked and they didn't try to push you in the direction that they thought you should go. They just let you kind of guide it. And did you feel that that was your whole childhood? Did they do that most of the time?
All the time.
That's
My mom
special.
and dad, phenomenal. And as I look back on my career, I don't. Thankfully, I'm sort of lucky because I don't know any other way than just
Yeah.
having your mom and dad be your fan.
Mm,
I would come off the ice after a game, and honestly, we never talked hockey in the car.
My gosh, really?
Maybe if I brought it up, I remember playing at the national team level, so I'm older at this point, and my mom, like, just such an awesome gal. She'd just sort of wait to see what my energy was and sort of how I framed the game before she ever said anything. Because she'd always say, "Great game, honey," and I'm like, "Mom, did you watch? Like, I was terrible that game." But in her eyes, I was never terrible. She was so thrilled. My dad, both of them to this day, they watch me coach and they love it. Like, it's thrilling.
They're supportive.
So,
Were they
I think one of
athletes?
the what's that?
Did they play? Were they athletes?
Well, my dad played for sure. My mom was never allotted that opportunity. But what I love is when I go golfing with him now, I can see my mom's athleticism as well as my dad's, right? Like,
Very
so
cool.
there's an athletic piece there that I certainly was fortunate to inherit and leverage. But
Do you see that in the rinks with parents? Like when I ask kids, what are you struggling with? The ride home is completely you hear it when kids are coming out of the locker room. I mean, and I've done it too to my own. They come out and immediately you want to correct. And my dad's nudging me and he's like, just say good game. Like it's kind of like as a culture, we've gone down this more aggressive hole when it comes to our younger athletes instead of just saying, go have fun. There's so much pressure I find on the
well,
younger
I
ones
think
today.
I think the good news of the pressures, it's actually rooted in love. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
parents are so genuinely invested in their children's well-being, and they want them to be given the opportunities that everyone else is being given. And, with that then comes sort of that heightened awareness. So I think, there's always the outliers, but I think the general norm, it's just a sort of a reflection of their love, and they want the best for their kids. And with that, then, you want to be able to take away the barriers and the adversity that they hit, and you want to be given every opportunity that Sally Jane's given next door, and
Yeah.
and with that, to your point, then comes the sort of the pressure of keeping up with one another. And when you start comparing and challenging, and I always say to our parent group, I coached high school hockey for a long time. I always said to that parent group, the toughest place to be in the rink wasn't on the bench, it was in the stands, because
Mm-hmm.
it's just constant conversation about who's talking to what school or what's going on here, and it's a comparison game. And so, I think our society is a lot more that way now, just even with social media and variables that way. So without a doubt, there's a
Mm-hmm.
bigger spotlight now on sort of the outcome of kids' careers instead of the journey of their careers. And really, what does the sport provide any of us and all of us? Like, I always joke with everyone, we all end up in the same league. We're
Yeah.
all in beer league. It's just what path did you take to
Yeah,
it?
that's true. That's
And
true.
I think ensuring, the journey of the sport, and all the life skills that team sport and being involved in it provides us, much easier said than done. And I'm not a parent, so anyone who's a parent could easily shut this off right now and say, what is she talking about? But I was able to work with a lot of kids
Yeah.
for 7 years at Edge School, and obviously have nieces and nephews, and I was a kid. But I can see it from all angles, but certainly for me, the sort of allowing the kids to explore what sport offers, including adversity, including setbacks, is something we don't want to take away from the game, because that's what helps us when we get older.
I love that. And speaking of setbacks and adversity, when was your first, because if you had supportive parents and you've got that sunny disposition that you naturally do, for you, I would imagine a little bit later in your career, you may have experienced more adversity. I found, like, for me, I was kind of I'm always the glass half full type, smiley person, always having fun. But when you did face your first adversity or something that didn't go right and your energy shifted, how did you handle it, and what was the reaction in your outer world as well as your inner world? That's what I'm very curious about.
Yeah, I think the easiest example, I think there's others, but the easiest examples, to your point, the first time I was ever cut from a hockey team was when I was trying out for the national team.
Mhm.
And I was actually cut multiple years in a row. And how did I manage it? Not overly well. Like, you're so disappointed. You talk about external pressures. When you're getting up to that level, everyone kind of knows that you're at those camps and you're in the mix for a world championship. So to me, the disappointment was I felt a little bit bigger than just sort of my internal. But I think what I'm grateful for is where I don't know if I always process it, well or perfectly by any means. I had the right people around me that allowed me to sort of bounce off that bottom and
Mm.
then find my way again. And, I've been able to sort of comfortably learn to bet on myself,
Mm.
and with a willingness to recognize the outcome may not be what I desire. So, when I was cut the first time, I was disappointed, but when I was cut the second time, I was hurt.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had to sort of dig in, and I had to decide at the end of the day for me. So kind of that quiet space internally, it was like, is this worth it? And for me, it was. So I gave it another go, and, you know, I was fortunate to play in 6 world events, including the 2 Olympics and 4 world championships. So, you know, it's, you know, you probably smooth it a little bit now that it's so many years down the way. You know, it's 20 some years ago now, but you know, in the moment, it's pretty profound. It's pretty impactful.
Yeah. I mean, what a pivotal time too, because you think that could have been a quitting moment for you. That could have
Oh,
been a
right.
throw in the gloves. And you see players all the time, and how would you react to, if people don't make it, they get cut, or they're lacking the playing time that they wish they wanted. I always say, keep showing up. If it matters, keep showing up. I mean, you hear Denzel Washington always says, like, hang around a barber shop long enough, eventually you're going to get a haircut, right? And I'm definitely one of those people that always inserts myself in situations, and doors eventually do open. Did you have moments? Because I feel like even the best of the best have moments of like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. Or
Yeah, I
was
think,
that through line still there that was like, no, this is too important. I'm going
no,
to.
I think the immediate response is always quit. Like, it's just far
Yeah.
easier, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
just human. Either you're blaming or quitting. And I think I was going to do both in those moments. I know it's certainly blaming.
Yeah.
You know, so it does take a little bit.
Hmm.
And, you know, I think the hardest part through any adversity like that, particularly in sport where you don't control enough variables to really dictate the outcome, you know, is having enough confidence within to risk it again.
I
You know,
love that.
you're putting yourself out on a limb, and, you know, you have to have a certain level of self-confidence or a willingness to be okay with failure. And I guess that's where, you know, as I've matured here, I'm able to better define it. I don't think I knew it at the time. But when I look back now and I see what I've done within my coaching career, I don't think I risk the challenge when, you know, I know that, you know, all I can do is go in and do my best. And,
Yeah.
and that's, you know, what I learned pretty early on in my hockey days was just, I got to go be me. And,
Mm.
again, easier said than done, but it helped me through those times.
Yeah, and for any athletes listening, what would be your advice? Because it's true, there's a lot that we can't control, and there's a lot of. I always tell kids too, just because you're not the fanciest player doesn't mean you don't fit someone's piece of the puzzle. Like, I wasn't a top goal scorer, but I had a presence. I was physical. I would cough up the puck. I mean, I was a ringette player until I was like 15,
Yeah.
and then switched over and was talking to Princeton, Yale, Harvard. Went on some recruiting trips. I think I had a fluke my freshman year. Came out of the gate scoring goals, and then went back. They're like, "What the heck? You got 7 points right away in 7 games." And then Janine, that wasn't me type thing.
Right.
But what would you say to those athletes that obviously you can't control certain things, and you don't know I always tell them, you don't know why people are making decisions sometimes behind closed doors. You don't know their long-term vision. So what would you be telling them to do on themselves away from the rink to stay in either a peak state or stay the course, or what would you disengage with, and what would you focus on?
I think, you know, to me, it's sort of twofold. And again, when I was working with younger athletes, and we do it here too in Ottawa, so it's not that it's always on the younger kids, but it's when you work with kids, you tend to peel things back to simplify. And I
Hmm.
find when you can simplify, you can find your way easier. And so, you know, when I think of trying to grow yourself and sort of elevate yourself to the level that you are your goals and your aspirations, you know, it's twofold. One is, you know, you have to commit to not being outworked.
Mm.
And that's a really hard thing to do. Because if you do what everyone else is doing and you're chasing, you'll never catch.
Yeah.
You know, so when you're trying, like when I go back to trying to make the national team, well, nobody's giving up their spot on the national team. Say, hey, young punk, you come take it. You're a nice
Yeah,
kid. You know,
exactly.
you have to make ground on them. And so, you know, one of the things I vowed very, very early on in my career was I wouldn't miss a day of training. And I didn't love training.
Mm.
But I had great strength and conditioning coaches. I had good teammates and friends that we trained with. And, you know, it was an enjoyable experience because of that. But it's not like you know, I don't wake up today hoping to go for a jog. Like, it's not really my
Yeah.
natural wiring, but I knew it was one variable as a smaller player,
Yeah.
that, you know, it was always going to be a knock. So I had to be as strong and as fit as I could be. So I always, and to this day, I promised myself I won't be outworked. And that's a commitment that is hard, and it has bad days and it has good days.
Yeah.
But then the other side of that is you have to know where your strengths lie. You know, I think too much in this industry, we focus on the weaknesses of everyone instead of, you know, exactly to your example, you know who you are and become the best at it. You know,
Yeah.
I wasn't a very good shooter. I was a terrible shooter. I practiced really, really hard to have a really average shot. But I could pass.
Yeah.
And so I had to find ways to make, my decisions with the puck impact our team positively. And, if you look at it, I'm a defender. So if I have a very high rate of first pass percentage, that's something that at any level is going to be appreciated. And so I just had to really sink into who I was as a player and hone that and try to become the best at it. And I thought that would give myself the fighting chance. I couldn't go be the Broad Street bully out there. I'm too small. I'd get knocked down all the
Yeah.
time.
What are you, 5'3", 5'4"?
Yeah, 5'4",
5'4".
and so, I think that's another hard part of our world these days is everyone's trying to be everything
Mm.
instead of saying, hey, I'm actually really great at this. Watch me excel.
Yeah, I love that. And what about, I mean, the name on the back of the jersey, I mean, can carry you through, you're playing at these high levels. People know you're doing autograph sessions afterwards. I talk a lot about life after sports and that identity issue with athletes. What was that like for you? You seem like you're very grounded, whether it comes with knowledge and age and reflection, which you seem very in tune with, but, is there a moment where you could see where kind of the ego took over and you had to just take a step back and be like, whoa, I just got hijacked there. I'm trying to be this. Cause you did make reference to, sinking into um, your natural state for who Carla MacLeod is as a player. But did you ever experience that?
Yeah, like I think, you reference the name on your back, regardless of the logo on the front, you always have the name on the back, and that's your people around you. That's your group. And I think, the greatest thing that your family and your friends can do is, when you're down, like I said, and you're hitting that bottom, they bounce you back up, but they also the same ones that tug you down
Mm,
when you get a little up there. And I don't think, I hopefully I haven't, overtly been anything, you know, massively arrogant at any point, but of course there's moments that occur that you can start to float a little high. And I had great people around me that would just give me a little tug to come back down and remember like who you're at and or where you're from. So I think that's certainly part of it. And yeah, it's the people around you, but I'm also been really fortunate to have been impacted by some incredible coaches. Like, when I think of growing up and Wally Kozak, like he had played on the national team. He's still to this day, he's one of the most knowledgeable people I ever know in the game. And to see what he had accomplished and how humble he stayed was inspiring. I played for Mark Johnson at the University of Wisconsin. He's so highly decorated. He did so much in his playing career. It's unbelievable. What his dad's achieved as Badger Bob in his coaching career is just like second to none. And you walk in with Mark and he's just Mark Johnson. And
mhm.
I just admire that. And I
Yeah.
have for years and years and years. So, I think I've also been fortunate to be, sort of exposed to people who have, way, way, way more resume than I'll ever have. But I can just still go sit at their house and have dinner and just be one of
Yeah.
them. So it's not lost on me that there's a lot of people in my world that are incredibly humble and hardworking. And, I guess I'm fortunate that I get to be around them and learn from them.
Yeah, I do notice that with a number of, like when I was speaking with Claude Julien, I mean, he talks about being humble as a very important quality, and he saw, what I got to do as a privilege, and he wanted to share that piece as opposed to being, and he talks about players, being humble. So you definitely see this consistency towards people that are at the top, and I love that. I noticed you talk a lot about integrity and preparation, preparation as well. I think I saw I don't know if you were talking to some students or something I think about preparation, but what does that mean to you for some of the athletes that are listening? Because I too believe like, let's work on the things that no one can take away from you, your character, your integrity with your word, your work ethic. You nailed it. I always say this to the kids that I'm speaking to. If there's 10 of you and you got a scout looking at you and you're all the same skill set, well, what separates you? Your attitude, your character, how you treat your teammates, how you respond to feedback. Are you coachable? Which of those are the most important to you when you think about your position now and when you played?
Yeah, they all matter. They all matter,
Mhm.
and they matter at different times. And that's why trying to just be a good, kind human and a great teammate is so critical.
Yeah.
When you talk about preparation, like my time with the national team, Mel Davidson was our general manager and head coach. And, she's one of the most detail-oriented, diligent leaders I've seen, that she just left no stone unturned. And, somewhat when you're living at it, it's challenging because it's, you're constantly working, constantly preparing. But I walked into 2 Olympic Games and knew we're the most prepared team And we were able to then just play with ease because of the hard work that was done in the lead up. So, when you look at it from sort of the work side of preparation, you want to be able to control that as an athlete and as a coach, and you want to do right by everyone involved. When you talk about sort of the human piece of preparation and just being a great human, that's something that can't be lost on people. And, it's not just at the rink either. It's at the grocery store. Can you hold the door for someone? Can you pick up some garbage on your way in if you just happen to see it? And, I think those are the details that actually add up at the end of the day, and really do allow you to be given the right opportunities. Like, it doesn't mean you're going to make it, because maybe the skill set doesn't align with it, but you are going to, so that's in sport, but you are going to make it in life because you're positively impacting others. And sometimes in sport, we just get so tunnel visioned on the result. We forget about, what the long-term play is here.
Your answers are phenomenal. And I'm like, you're inspiring me as you're speaking here. And I love the way you look at life as these athletes, as humans, and just being a good human. I mean, I always say that to my kiddos as well. It's not our garbage, but it's our planet. So we're going to pick it up, and let's hope that person accidentally just dropped it. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. But what have you struggled with? Like what do you feel like when you think about yourself as a younger athlete, then going to the university route, professional, which was the toughest transition for you? And then the life after sports piece, when you transition from player to coach, what were those transitions like for you? And was it, or you seem again like a very happy-go-lucky, if you didn't have a big off period between any of those, have you maybe gone through that yet? Or is it still because you've gone from playing to coaching, maybe it hasn't hit you yet?
I'm not sure it'll hit me. I think, I've been really comfortable in who I am and what I do for a long time. And, I've been fortunate in the transition pieces where I think everyone's experience is different.
Yeah.
I think I've been really fortunate again to be able to have a fairly smooth transition. To your point, I still am in the sport that I love. And I'm actually probably in the more comfortable role for my natural wiring than I ever was as a player. So that has helped me tremendously. The biggest struggle has and always will be in this industry is to what we talked about earlier, the comparison piece.
Yeah.
When you're trying to make teams and you're trying to play on your national team, and you're constantly, you're overtly being evaluated. You're getting feedback on your evaluation, so you're constantly comparing. And I really struggled to ever feel comfortable in or confident that I was good enough to be there. Like, I always felt like I was chasing my own spot, and I had to hold on to it every year. And part of it is the design of the national team in our country, because there's such depth in Canada. So there was a piece of that was a reality, but for me personally, it never allowed me to sort of exhale. And I found it really fatiguing. I retired at 27. I certainly probably had more in the tank than that, but I didn't have the capacity to maintain that sort of, I guess, a chasing lifestyle, like always chasing the goal, always having to do it again. You got to do it again. Like it didn't wear on me well. And when I transitioned into coaching, it took me a long time to unwire that wiring. So when I started out as a young coach, I was like, I have to prove to everyone I'm great. And like, I wasn't, number one. And number two, I'm not sure if anyone was actually looking to see how I was doing. But that wiring of trying to always, well, how come they're not taking me on this team? Or why am I not coaching that group? Or, and it was just honestly exhausting.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't until I'm going to say actually like right before the Canada Games in 2019, I was coaching Team Alberta. I called Mark Johnson, my university coach. He's the calmest human being I've ever met. Like behind the bench, that guy is just cool as a cucumber. So I called him and I said, Mark, were you that calm when you were my age? Like, is this something you've gained over time? And he just said this to me. He goes, Carla, your team's going to be a reflection of you. What do you want to see?
Ah,
and I was like,
I
bingo.
love that. Say that again. Your team
will always be a reflection of you. What do you want to see?
I love that.
And so I said, thank you, because I always love my calls with him. And I went into the Canada Games and I very consciously made an effort to be the best Mark Johnson I could be. Never up, never down, just steady Eddie. Everything was good. We're in a great spot, regardless of scoreboard. We're going to be okay. And it shifted my whole experience as a coach.
Yeah, you're not getting hijacked by your emotions, right?
No, and you're not fighting a fight that you weren't even invited to.
Yeah.
And we had tremendous success there. We were an underdog, but we ended up winning Canada Games, which isn't easy to do as Alberta. And so, I was sold hook, line, and sinker on this Mark Johnson approach. And, Wally Kozak carries the same. Mel Davidson's very calm as well. but it's just learning it at the right time for me.
Yeah.
And since then, it's helped me sort of better manage the role in the position as a coach.
Yeah, I love that. It's beautiful. And I know you're big on smiling.
Hmm.
That's a big and having fun. And that's what do you do behind closed doors? Because again, you definitely have a really amazing self-awareness about you. Even when you speak, you can tell it's not just surface level. You're not just doing the interview. I can feel your heart when you're dispensing this knowledge and these nuggets on all of us in this interview, and I'm grateful to have you here. But are you someone like, for me, after my breast cancer, I really got into journal. I was always a writer, but meditation and more into that. What do you do behind closed doors to help yourself stay grounded and in this peak state?
I don't know what the speak state is.
You're
Um,
like the Zen coach.
no, you know what, I think it's not lost on me, similar to maybe what you're alluding to when your conversation with Claude there. Like, this is a privilege, and it's a
Hmm.
chance to work with people, and it's a chance to have an opportunity to, maybe uh, not so much me possibly impact them, but for them to see their own potential.
Hmm.
And I think that's what my great coaches did for me. And I had some great coaches in minor hockey too. Some incredible dads that I was the only girl on the team, but they wholeheartedly invested in me and believed in me. And, and I think that feeling that they generated, known or unknown to them, has stuck with me. I think great teachers have done the same thing. You know those great teachers that when you just think of their name, like you have a physical response internally that's
Yeah,
just positive. I just don't want to be anything other than that.
I love
Uh,
it.
I don't need to win anything more. I didn't even need to win anything looking back now, but I'm fortunate that I've had that. Obviously, within our industry, it helps open opportunities up to you. But when I look at this opportunity right in front of me that I'm sitting here in Ottawa with the new women's league and our pro franchise, like, at the end of the day, in my mind, it's like all I'm going to do is try to help you get better.
Mm,
And if at the end of the day it doesn't click or it doesn't work and I'm not the right fit, that's okay. Like,
yeah.
it's okay. I just actually just go home to Calgary. Like it's not so bad. But when you can wake up every day just trying to go about it that way, I find my days are much more fulfilling than worrying about who's not doing what and what's not going on. And
Yeah.
I'm still human. I have my bad days and I have my tired days, and that's inevitable. But I think I just try to stay as grounded as I can in just sort of this experience that we call life, and just realize, you don't want to be in the race. The chase game isn't my wiring, and so I'm trying not to chase anything.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And what would you say to maybe some younger athletes that are possibly, you know, they've played, they've had some great careers, or, like you said, you've been very lucky to stay in the game you love
Mhm.
and at some capacity. So, um, that's definitely amazing. But what advice would you maybe have to a young athlete who, they're played, they've been injured, or they can't move on?
Mhm.
What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think sometimes when we're in sport, and the longer that we're in sport, sort of the more tunneled we become in sort of what we understand about the world. And one thing I wish we could do better for young athletes was translate the tool set that they're acquiring on their day-to-day experience in sport, whether it be from a detailed perspective and preparation to their capacity to work within a group. All these transferable traits that end up helping you in everything that you do, whether you're in the corporate world or wherever your career takes you. And I think too often, the longer we're in sport, the less confident we become in the real world. And
Hmm.
for women in particular, I think there's a natural sport network for men that helps some athletes, not all, but I think there's a network out there in a lot of the business world that can sometimes help the men. And I think as women, we're just building that infrastructure. But somebody within the business world translating what we've done as athletes, that's going to allow us to be highly successful in
Yeah.
any. And so just further education on those transferable skills, I think, because I wouldn't have that confidence going into a corporation either. I'm still in the world that I'm comfortable in,
You
you
bring
know.
your whistle into the
Yeah,
corporate.
exactly. Exactly.
What does this mean?
Yeah. And then I think the other piece is, again, similar to what you would do as an athlete, be willing to try things. Um, you know, we miss what we know, but we don't know about what could be coming our way,
Yeah.
like, so that sort of fear of the unknown can be daunting. And but no different than what everyone does as an athlete. You're betting on yourself, and if you're willing to go out into the world and be a little bit vulnerable, it's amazing the people that'll kind of take you under their wing and help you be. And I was really fortunate when I retired. I was an RBC Olympian, and they were hiring me in the spring of 2010. And I said to the hiring, my boss, in essence, I said, like, I just need to be upfront. Like, I'm going to retire. Like, I'm not going to keep going. So I'm going to be a retired Olympian. And they said, no, we would love to still have you on our team. And, you know, they don't get enough credit for my coaching career, because if I didn't have that RBC Olympian position in Calgary, I wouldn't have been able to volunteer coach at Mount Royal for my first 4 years. And, you know, those years volunteering at Mount Royal with Scott Rivet were really, you know, critical in my sort of learning how to coach and what it took. Cause you think you'd know as a player, but you don't really.
No, for sure.
Yeah. So it's amazing. Like, so that, to be honest, like that corporate world actually provided me the safety net to pursue this as my career.
Yeah.
So, you know, you just have to be honest and vulnerable. And it's amazing how people will step up on your behalf and try to help you.
Yeah, and that's where your skill sets as a great human has set you up for that experience as well, right? They were willing. But I love this piece because confidence is a big issue with the athletes that I work with. And taking a bet on yourself, really, why would anyone else take a bet on you if you can't take a bet on yourself? But from the confidence issue, when you were younger, I mean, you had really supportive parents. So was there a year where your confidence was really low? It sounds like you were quite blessed with parents and coaches that did help facilitate and cultivate this beautiful personality and persona that is Carla MacLeod. But when did you lack confidence, and did you recognize it, or looking back, recognize it? And what did you do to grow into that person that does take chances on themselves? Because we see this, it's the number one thing that when people bring me in to speak with their athletes, it's like their confidence is low.
Yeah. And I hear it all the time too in my role, obviously. And, you know, I think I've always joked, I said, you know, my business card reads Carla MacLeod, head coach of, you know, whatever team. But the reality is I think all of us in a coaching industry are actually just confidence builders. Like that's actually what you're trying to do. So, you know, I think certainly my confidence has wavered throughout my career as both a player and a coach. You know, you're trying to make an Olympic team, and you know, there's cuts to be had. Like, you know, there's always question marks, but am I good enough? Am I doing right? And, you know, the hardest part I'm learning as a coach is like, sometimes it doesn't matter what the coach or what the parents say. Your voice is so much louder in your own head. And, you know, even today, like, you know, at this level in the PWHL, like you're trying to say to these athletes, like, hey, you know, I promise you, I'll tell you if you're no good.
Yeah.
But, you know, quit telling yourself you're no good, because I assure you, you're actually really great. You know, but, you know, that self voice is always there. And again, the only way that I know to sort of backfill that and to maintain your confidence is to be as prepared as you can be.
Yeah.
And that's all you got at the end of the day.
No, for sure. And you could feel it, like even when you were describing going into I think it was the Olympic team, when you have prepared and planned, it does just become your playground. You get to just show up and do the thing that you absolutely love. And that's where the preparation piece comes in. And even as a speaker, when like tomorrow, I'm speaking to 2,500 female athletes, but it's the prep work that I've done where I can go in and like people are always like, I don't even know how you do it. I'd be, you know, nervous standing in front of two people, but because of the prep work and the writing and digging down into my message, you know, that excites me. So I love that. And I think sometimes with athletes, I mean, I don't know who said this, but it's always stuck with me. You can't be upset for the results you didn't get from the work you didn't do. And whenever I don't achieve a goal, because I'm an all-in girl, I take a real hard look and I'm like, let's be honest, you went 85. You didn't go 100. Every time I've gone 100, I've accomplished and won and hit that nail on the mark. But yeah, so I love that.
Yeah. And sometimes the missed mark actually is the mark. You just didn't know it.
I know, redirection. I definitely and I love that you said that, because some athletes, they just have it in their head. They're supposed to do this, or they're supposed to be here. And it's like, you have no idea, or you're going to get traded, or you're going to go somewhere else, or something's going to happen that your whole world's going to change. Did you experience that in your career personally?
Like, I don't think like anything that was like a sharp turn, you know, obviously the setbacks to making the national team. But I think maybe the flip side of that is like, I didn't realize the doors that could be opened. I didn't realize the potential opportunities that even existed. Like when I retired in 2010, they're like, you know, what are you going to do in the next 10 years? I maybe would have got like one of the 8 things that I've done. You know, like I had no idea that coaching internationally would be on my radar. And I've done it now, you know, with 2 different countries, with Japan and Sochi, and I'm currently with Czech, as you mentioned. And, you know, those weren't on my radar. So, you know, where I think the hard turn can come from a setback perspective, it's balanced out by opportunity too. So, you know, I think those are the ones that have maybe astonished me a little bit more. It's like, how does this even happen? And
Yeah.
you know, I have to give Mel Davidson a lot of credit for a lot of those opportunities, because you know, she has put her name on my name from a coaching perspective, particularly with Japan. And you know, I'm so grateful, because it was an incredible experience and sort of a defining opportunity for me as a young coach. So, you know, maybe that's not as miraculous as actually just a really great person supporting me and helping me gain my legs as a coach. But yeah, I think that's another thing for young athletes when they're venturing into retirement is, you know, just, you know, you think you know the path, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
really don't know the path.
No, and be open to the magic. Like I always tell, sometimes when I'm working with athletes, I'm like, let me see your schedule. We're going to take this out, take this out, take this out. There's no room for spontaneity. So how are you even having fun?
Yeah.
You've booked yourself so solid. There's no room for growth, reflection, introspection,
Yeah.
all those things that help you reevaluate. You know, okay, even in a game when you didn't play well, we've all had games where we didn't play well. You know, okay, whatever sticks out to you, that's your intention going into practice. You know, you keep passing up the middle, you're a D, maybe it's pick my head up 1 extra second, you know, and
Yeah.
sitting that and having fun with it. I was always that player. Maybe I could have been, I was one of the assistant captains at UNH, but we would lose a game and I would have some of the girls in the room that would just be like, they'd be still crying when we'd be going out for beers at
Yeah.
that night or whatever. And I'd be like, moving on to my next one.
Yeah.
But looking back, I'm like, oh, it really did just kind of float off my shoulder, but we had a lot of fun. And Colette, you played with Colette, was it in Alberta, Team
Yeah.
Alberta?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was one of my coaches, which crossover. I love that. What
Yeah.
would you, as we kind of start to land the plane, as they say, what is some advice that you would give your younger self that you wish you could have known back then?
You know, I think it's just like breathe, you know, to your point,
Yeah.
like just enjoy it a little bit more. I was probably wired the other way in college. Like I was so fixated on trying to make the Olympic team that
Mm,
probably, you know, going out after a game here or there probably would have actually been the right balance point. But again, you do what you know. And you know, it's all I knew. And I to our, you know, sort of the whole duration of this conversation, I wanted to give myself the best opportunity, but I was pretty strict with myself. And I think I had to be. So I'm
mm-hmm.
not regretting it. I don't think I
Yeah.
regret it by any means, but you know, I wish I could have just exhaled a little bit more and smiled. And I think that's why as a coach now I try to bring that in, because that's really, I'm speaking to myself when I speak to them. Um,
Yeah.
you know, I've lived a lot of what they've gone through as athlete from an athlete perspective. And I know the stress that you put on yourself. So I just try as a coach to alleviate that, because, you know, that's what I needed. And again, my favorite coaches did that. My
Yeah.
most impactful coaches. So yeah, I think it was just that. It was just sort of, you know, maybe enjoy the journey instead of the chase, you know, and I struggle with that, as I mentioned.
Excuse me.
But now, you know, I think that's where I'm settling in. Like I'm 41 and a half now, be 42 in the
And
summer.
a half. I just turned
Yeah.
42.
Yeah. It's my niece just turned 10. So we're,
Sorry.
you know, we're still talking halves.
I know. Who knew there was a half birthday? I was like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. But I just find at this age, it's just it's been a comfortable age for me too, to better understand more about myself. And you know, I have no doubt, with further experience, you only make gains.
Yeah, no, and I've watched you at the games. I always kind of look at coaches and their body language, and I'm always watching body language or the experience, and it really is a ripple effect to everyone around you. You know, I always say life's currency is showing up, and so when we take care of ourselves and we control the energy, that's the planning and prep piece for you.
Mhm.
And then when we bring that to our team, it's just a ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
And I've been nothing but impressed by you. You're beautifully articulate in a way that's very easily understood and felt at the heart. So we're really excited to have you, obviously, as the head coach here in Ottawa. So and thank you for everything you've done for female sports and for being here and for contributing to this conversation. Something that's very near and dear to my heart as we try to support those athletes that could be suffering around the globe. And what I love about your journey too, it doesn't have to be, some of the stories that I have had on this series have been major life struggle right after sport,
Mhm.
and it's not the case for every athlete, right? It's not going to be this always this major stumble backwards or this crisis part of your life. It can just be a redirection, and you're navigating it, and I love that you can control it with work ethic and preparation and a great attitude, right? And having integrity with your word and contributing to the world around you, picking up garbage. So you've dispensed a ton of nuggets on us today. Any last words before we shut her down, or anything that maybe I should have asked that you didn't get a chance to say?
No, except for the fact that I want to thank you, because I think these platforms and the work that you're doing from the lens that you're doing it from is impactful on others, and obviously you're getting yourself opportunities to talk to a lot of people and share stories, and I think it can't be lost on any of us. We sit on this side of the interview and just spew and spew and spew, but the reality is if it's the conversation that makes the difference, and the fact that you've created space for conversation, I think, is incredible. So I just wanted to commend you on your work and what you're doing, and encourage you to keep going too, because it's impactful.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We're excited that we've had you. For those of you that are tuning in, this is episode 48 of Transitioning to Life After Sports with head coach of the Professional Women's Hockey League, Carla MacLeod, for Ottawa's team. So thank you, Carla.
Thank you.